Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt. Today I'll be discussing Ida Lupino's Outrage from 1950, one of 5 feature films Lupino directed during a period in which she was the only woman directing in Hollywood. Lupino used her brief 5-year stint as a film director before heading into television direction to draw attention to a number of injustices characterizing the post-war United States, including a few issues involving the marginalization of women. Fair warning, I will talk about the first 30 minutes of the film, including analysis of a stalking scene that precedes a rape. The sexual assault is implied, but not represented on screen. I hope to prime you to watch this powerful but occasionally distressing film on your own. Lupino hit the ground running with her first film, Not Wanted, stepping in for director Elmer Clifton after a heart attack incapacitated him only a few days into filming. Though Lupino, ever the team player, chose not to request official credit for her assistance, she helped flesh out the screenplay and directed most of the film herself. Instead of perpetuating the shame associated with pregnancy outside of marriage in the mid-20th century, Not Wanted dramatizes Sally Forrest's guilt and the mental illness that follows giving up her baby for adoption, only to counter these heavy burdens with the unwavering affection of a man whose own stigmatized condition, due to a mobility impairment, grants him a window into her isolation. Ex-soldier Drew Baxter lost the girlfriend he had left back in the States upon returning from the European front with a decided limp. As he explains to Sally, "I wasn't up to her speed anymore." In a moving scene I refuse to spoil, his impairment actually provides Sally a much-needed new perspective, allowing both Drew and Sally to escape the condescending pity they've experienced from others and to take comfort in a shared, leveling sympathy. The following year, the film Never Fear explored disability more directly, with a script Lupino co-wrote, drawing on her own brief experience with polio as a teenager. Once again, affection provides a path through difficulty. Another stalwart man refusing to let a woman cocoon herself, in this case, because she's decided that a disabling condition of her own disqualifies her from romance. In these first 2 films, Lupino's male leads continue to offer lifelong intimacy when a woman is at her most vulnerable, refusing to let self-loathing erect a wall between herself and the man she wants but thinks herself too broken to deserve. Lupino also makes it clear in both stories that each woman does have much to offer a partner, despite her trauma. There might be a little bit of the damsel in distress vibe woven into these films, but neither woman is truly weak. Both just need to be reminded of their value. It could be argued that nearly every social problem we face is either caused or exacerbated by someone's taking advantage of another person's vulnerability. In Not Wanted and Never Fear, a vulnerable relationship has already been established prior to the traumatic event. Neither man is swooping in from afar, having identified an easy and likely target desperate for attention. Initially, at least, relational vulnerability proves a strength, providing refuge in time of need. The same holds for Lupino's third film, Outrage, which she again helped conceive and write. Once more, we meet a vibrant woman optimistic about the future and connected to a young man so committed to loving his partner that he doesn't hesitate to affirm his affection following an excruciating event that flips his lover's world upside down. This time, however, Lupino suggests that the horrifying nature of this trauma, sexual assault, requires far more than a devoted lover can provide. Following the rape that shatters Ann Walton's worldview, leading her to conclude that everything is filthy and dirty, Anne is confronted at every turn by a new and distressing encounter tied to her trauma. Determined to find the attacker, a female officer pushes Anne, still in shock, to relive what just happened only hours after the fact. The next morning, Anne wakes to discover that her tragedy has made local headlines, the newspaper publicizing her name and situation as law enforcement officials attempt to track down the perpetrator. Then, she overhears her loving father, who, though a professor, is not smart enough to avoid saying on the front porch where she can overhear him that his students have been staring at him in the classroom, quote, as though I were some kind of curiosity. And so it continues, with Anne facing the stares, whispers, and leers of fellow citizens when she courageously returns to work 2 days after the attack. Most disturbing of all is a response of a man who knows the family and, before asking how her parents are doing, looks Anne up and down and comments on the nice dress she's wearing. Though uncomfortable with his attention, Anne appears to have little recourse and must submit to his attention, to his helping her onto the bus moments later. In this film, we encounter many types of bad behavior in men attracted, aroused even, by Anne's vulnerability. In the 2025 book, Morbidly Curious, a scientist explains why we can't look away, behavioral psychologist Colton Scrivener argues that morbid curiosity has survival value. While interest in threat-related information can lead to a pathological obsession with danger, choosing to absorb practical knowledge about fatal and near-fatal situations can help us respond half a second faster in those rare instances where our life hangs in the balance. This salutary instinct, Scrivener argues, explains some viewers' love of those movies involving serial killers and monsters. Horror flicks might exaggerate matters with finger knives and machetes, test our patience for the absurd by allowing murderers to kill victims from inside their dreams or end lives with heavy, unwieldy chainsaws, and enlist impossible creatures like vampires and werewolves. But such films also draw our attention to actual hazards, including blood-borne diseases, impulses buried in our subconscious, dark alleys, wild animals, and the cunning strategies of predatory humans. Scrivener holds that our capacity for imagination allows us to, quote, drastically reduce the cost of engaging with threat-related information. You don't need to be a firefighter, soldier, or rescue worker who risks their own well-being in order to absorb life-saving information. Just read a scary book, watch a blood-curdling movie, or play an immersive, spine-chilling video game. To those who contest such gruesome pastimes, contending that anyone who enjoys watching fictional deaths must surely lack empathy, Scrivener responds by pointing out that empathy itself is no guarantee of loving kindness. That same empathic ability, which undergirds care of family members or those in dire straits, can also be used to manipulate and take advantage of the vulnerable. Knowing more about the way other people function grants us power that can be used to support them when they falter, as in Ida Lupino's first two films, or, as dramatized in films like George Cukor's Gaslight and Lupino's Outrage, can become a weapon we use to hurt them. The stalking scene that precedes the unseen assault in Outrage illustrates one horrible way that vulnerability can be exploited. I am going to utterly spoil the way the stalking scene plays out, in the process providing a rather detailed content warning. I hope that mapping the criminal's actions and discussing Lupino's filmmaking decisions helps reduce some of the terror experienced by those who might be triggered by this effective scene. Lupino prepares us for this night in question well in advance. She shows us the culprit's face seconds after he's introduced, early in the film, instead of weaving a mystery around his identity and appearance. The camera lingers on him grudgingly, begging us to question why this secondary character deserves such airtime. His appearance by itself does not telegraph malintent. This food vendor's attempt to aggressively flirt with Anne when she swings by to pick up her dessert for herself and her boyfriend earns him little more than a harried and hasty glance from Anne, so he bides his time. After eavesdropping on a work conversation in which Anne mentions plans to work late one night, he waits till she exits the nearby building to close up his stand and follows her at a distance. Instead of creeping up on her to take her unawares, however, he does something rather surprising. He broadcasts his presence. His first call, "Hey, beautiful," she does not process because she's whistling and turning a corner, but as he slowly closes the gap, she begins to recognize what's happening and quickens her pace. Another, "Hey," and 3 piercing whistles follow as he continues ambling towards her, hands in his pockets. Though he briefly trots a couple times, at no point does he break into the run which characterizes Anne's attempts to lose him. It's as if he not only wants to capture and control her body, but terrorize her as much as possible in the process. Presumably, her distress sharpens his arousal. A few uneven handheld shots from behind our culprit and in front of Anne crank up the scene's tension, as does a silhouette of his shadow as this two-dimensional villain casually lights a cigarette. When a God's eye shot from above captures Anne running through wide open, brightly lit spaces that refuse to yield safety, a blaring taxicab either ignores or does not hear her cries for help. Her fate appears inevitable. Increasingly distraught, she darts into a trucking depot and enters a truck, only to set off the car's horn. Our confusion matches her own, as her continued pressing on the steering wheel can be read as either an irrational attempt to shut it off or a desperate effort to keep up the raucous noise so someone will overhear and help. Whatever her intentions, the sound helps her pursuer triangulate her position. She dashes madly out of the truck, only to collapse on some nearby stairs. As our villain walks up to his overwhelmed victim, the subjective camera shot of his approach loses focus, signaling Anne's loss of hope and her mind's attempt to protect her from processing every detail of what's about to happen. This encounter captures one of the worst abuses of power possible, reminding us that individual agency has great potential for good or evil whenever we encounter someone somehow weaker than ourselves, whether they're a child, someone with a disability, an aged person with a fragile frame, or someone who just happens to carry less weight or bodily strength. What follows in the rest of the film tests a number of male characters who, presented with different facets of Anne's newly vulnerable, rather fragile state of mind, reveal their innermost character away from prying eyes. What motivates each of these men? And do they themselves model vulnerability or attempt to take advantage of Anne's? Does disability play much of a role in the interactions we witness? Does romance? Does the film offer a healthy alternative to the male aggression it so masterfully spotlights? Finally, do you feel it beneficial to watch a movie like this one? Do you consider it a horror film? Why or why not?